I'm Swadha. I am a first year PhD student at MIT. I work in the Department of Physics and I specifically work in experimental uh, atomic, molecular, and optical physics. And I'm from IIT Kanpur. I did my BS Physics from IIT Kanpur. I graduated in 2021.
So what was your research experience like prior to this that led up to the point where, say, you wanted to apply for grad school?
Okay, so I started research pretty early on in my undergrad. Even so, I started in my first year, and I sort of started with a reading project in quantum information theory, which then converted into a proper project in the summer after my first year in quantum
Mhm.
information theory. And I knew pretty early on that I was inclined towards research, and then these early projects made me even more sure that this is what I wanted to do. And I continued working on these with the same professor for the first few winter and summer breaks. And then in my second year, I applied for an internship at I applied for a bunch of internships, but I finally went for an internship at the Max Planck Institute for Mathematics and the Sciences in
Mhm.
Germany. And so this was in the summer after my second year. And so I worked there for a summer, and I really liked the research environment, and I became even more sure that I wanted to work in like proper research with research environment and everything. And so but after that I was also working on some projects like experimental projects in the labs at IIT Kanpur, and they made me realize that maybe I enjoyed experimental work more than I enjoyed theoretical work. So in my third year, I did a few experimental projects, some side projects, and I also started working in the lab of Professor A.K. Jha at IIT Kanpur. And eventually I realized that I really liked working on experiments. And so that kind of led to my shift in from theoretical to experimental projects. And I applied to LIGO as part of the LIGO Surf program in my third year. And I got selected for that. And that's an annual program that happens at Caltech.
Mhm.
And I was supposed to go there, but because of the pandemic, that was not possible. But they were really accommodating about it, and they made it remote. So for in the summer after my third year, I worked remotely at LIGO Surf, and I also continued working as part of my UGP at the lab of Professor Anand Jha remotely. And so in my fourth year, I continued both these projects at Professor A.K. Jha's lab and at LIGO. And I simultaneously applied for grad school with this research experience. And yeah, I think that's a brief history of my research experiences in undergrad.
Nice. I think like a lot of physics people have this doubt that how do you decide whether you want to go on the observational side, like the computational observational side, or theoretical side versus experimental side. So how do you, or how did it work out
Yeah.
for you, or like what advice would you give?
Yeah. So some people are like, yeah, I've always liked working on electronics, or I've always liked taking machines apart and putting them back
Mhm.
together. That was not the case for me. And I think the Indian education really stresses more on theoretical learning than
Mhm.
experimental. And I still enjoy theoretical learning a lot. So initially, I thought that I was interested in research, and I thought that theoretical research would be better suited to me. But what is the reason I changed? I don't know. I liked working in labs more. I liked playing with lasers, and I liked
Mhm.
seeing things happen in front of me. And yeah, so I guess the advice is to try both out. And if you're confused, then you'll probably see what you like more.
Okay, great. So once you decided that you wanted to apply for grad school, so how was the process like how did you decide which places you would apply for? How did you look for the research groups versus universities?
Right. So actually, I decided that I would only apply to a few really one of my top choices, few of my top choices. And if I didn't get in, I would do an RA-ship or some kind of project work somewhere for a year and strengthen my profile and then reapply to after a year if things didn't work out. So I applied to 6 universities, and those were the universities I really wanted to work at because PhD is like a 5 to 6 year process, and you should really want to work at the places you apply to. So you have to decide between like what kind of places you want to apply to. So this is one approach, but an equally valid approach is to apply to a few dream schools, a few like schools that you think are within your reach or you think you could get into, and a few schools that are said to be backup schools, but honestly I disagree with that because there are no backup schools in PhD because it's really about research, and that's a big commitment. So but yeah, a few safer schools. So I think that's a decision you need to take about where you want to spend 5 years. So that's how I chose the universities.
So do you have an advice regarding how, like, it's a common question or common query that how many university should one apply for? Like how many, as you said, safe schools should one have? So I guess that's personal.
In general, I would say around 10, 11 is good. That's great. Because I think you really should work on each application. You shouldn't just write a generic statement of purpose and send out the same one and just find and replace the name of the university every time. Because if you, of course, it should be similar. You're not going to write one from scratch for every university. But if you take out the time to research about the university, then that really shows and that helps. So I think, and if you decide to apply to 20 places, then you're just going to be tired, and that will reflect in the quality of your application. So yeah, PhD applications are long, so 10 to 12 is good, and then maybe like 4, 4, 4, or that really depends on your situation, and I think that's something you need to decide for yourself.
Okay. By the way,
yeah, same, because like I had enough internships that I was like, someone will give me an RA-ship for a year. So I was like, I might as well try my luck. And,
makes sense. Okay. At any point, did you have any confusion between going for research versus industrial job?
No, I didn't. I know that people do, but I'm not the person to ask for advice about that. I was always clear that I didn't want to go into the industry.
Okay, once you started your application process, what was the timeline like for different preparation steps, like preparing for a SOP or GRE or asking for recommendation letters, etc.?
Okay, so I will leave the GRE part out of it because in my year they didn't ask for the GRE, and all of the schools I applied to didn't ask for the GRE. So that's something, I don't know if they're still asking for that, but that's something that was not a part of my process. And for me, I started shortlisting the schools I wanted to apply to around July, and I started reading about, and you should give some time for that. So you look at schools, you look at groups, you figure out what you want to do, and at the same time you have your third year intern going on, which is also helping you figure out what you want to do. And so around July to mid-August, I was just figuring it out where I want to go. And around the end of August, I had solidified it. And I think I started my first draft of my SOP around the beginning of September. And yeah, I think that allowed me to go through it many times, and in the end I'd like re-edited it so many times it made no sense to me, like the words had lost all meaning. But I'm glad that I started early because that gives you a time to reiterate. And now that I look at the first draft, I'm shocked at like how bad it was. So
this is keeping in mind a deadline of around December, right?
Yeah, so for all my programs, the deadline was December 15th. So yeah. I started in September. At the same time, I was working on multiple projects and I had like my semester going on. So all of this had to be taken into account.
Mhm.
And I also asked all the professors for letters of recommendation around mid September, which is early, but at least they knew that it was coming. So I asked them and they said yes. And I put in their names and I sent them the requests. Of course, no one filled it in September. I had to keep sending reminders later, but it's better if you ask them early and you have that out of the way.
Mhm.
And then you can keep sending them reminders and they can fill in the letters anytime before the deadline. And yeah, so then most of the work was to keep working on the SOP, and there's a lot of other things involved in filling the forms, but those are relatively trivial. So that was the main process. And then I started emailing professors around October, end of October. And so I would email one or two professors a week and see how it goes. And maybe we can discuss
Yeah.
how relevant emailing professors is later.
Mhm.
But yeah, that was kind of what I was doing in October, and also simultaneously re-editing my SOPs and getting them reviewed by people I trusted and people who had experience, more experience than I did.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think that's it. So because I started early, I was able to just do everything in an organized way and plan it out and plan out when I was going to submit each
Mhm.
application. So yeah.
Okay. So like starting with the first thing that you mentioned, the statement of purpose.
Mhm.
So what advice do you have regarding like how the overall flow or the how the SOP should read like versus what mistakes do people tend to make? That you mentioned, like you look at
Right.
your first draft with shock. So uh, what
Yeah.
are the various things that you've learned along the way?
So first of all, the SOP should not be like a longer version of your CV. Because I think a lot of people do that in their first draft, at least, is they just put together all of their project points that they already have in their CV as like proper sentences and paragraphs, and they think that that's it. But one thing that I think that your SOP should reflect with respect to projects is the motivation for the projects. So
Mhm.
I always liked to mention why we were doing that research and like what takeaways I had from that research. And the second thing was to tie it in with my future goals at that university. So, what did I learn from this research experience? Maybe if it's the same like field, say I was working on a quantum optics project and I want to continue working in quantum optics in my PhD, then that's great because those skills will transfer. But if I was working on like a math theory project, then how is that going to be relevant to,
Mhm.
or how is that experience of working at that institute going to be relevant to my PhD? So for each project, like just tying it to your future goals and like the skills you gain from that, that will help. That helped, I think. And also, of course, you should talk about what you want to do at the university that you're applying to, who you want to work with, but also what questions you want to answer, what fields you want to explore.
Mhm.
I think those are the three things that your SOP should cover broadly. Yeah.
Okay.
And then, of course, you should get it reviewed by seniors who have written SOPs because you won't know what you're doing wrong, but you will be doing many things wrong.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's something which like uh, has been like the common point across all this interviews that I've been doing is like
Yeah.
have it reviewed multiple times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, moving on to the second part, which was the letters of recommendations. So
Mhm.
for physics programs, how many LORs are required? And another query that people have is that if say more LORs are required than you have number of professors you have worked with, then what like who should you be asking the LORs from and stuff?
Okay.
Mhm.
So all of my programs required 3 LORs, and I chose 3 professors that I worked with and that were relevant to the field I was applying to. If you have less professors that you work with than the number of required LORs, I would say probably go to a course professor with whom you also did a project. Like lots of courses have projects within them, like maybe an optics lab project or anything. Just if you have done both a course and a little bit of a project, then they can say more about you than just a theoretical course professor can. And they can talk about your ability to do research, which is something that's important in an LOR. So preferably that. If not, then just look for a course professor who can talk about some ability beyond the classroom or beyond just whatever grade you got in the class. And if not even that, then yeah, go for a professor whose class you got an A plus in, or whose class is relevant. Or maybe if the professor is well known or well connected to the university you're applying to, then that can be something you look at.
Okay. So firstly, the better the professor knows you, the better. And
Yeah.
if not, then other factors.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned about the fact that you email professors a few weeks before you actually applied. So do you think that process helps? That should one be emailing professors or research groups before applying?
I don't think it can do any harm to email professors, so you should definitely do that. If mostly they won't even see your email because they get a lot of emails, and but if they do, and if they do reply, or if they see it and they keep you in mind, then that helps, because when your application comes up, someone will know who you are. And in a few cases, the professors replied really positively to me, in the sense that they were like, sure, excuse me, in the sense that they were like, sure, I look forward to your application, and I do have some open positions in my lab. So I would ask in my email, do you have any open positions for PhD students? And if they said yes, then that was a good sign, because if you're applying and the professor you're applying to doesn't even have spots, then it's good to know whether they have that or not. So yeah, in the cases where the professors replied, it would really be a positive sign. And if the professor doesn't reply, then that's not negative. It's just, it doesn't mean anything. But actually, in my case, the universities I got into, the professors did reply. So there is some connection. It doesn't mean that if they don't reply, you won't get in, but you should definitely email them. Yeah.
Okay. Another very common query is that so in your application process, is it your GPA that matters more, or is it your projects, or is it your recommendations? So what do you have to say regarding that?
Your projects matter a lot, and unfortunately, your who writes your letters of recommendation also matters a lot. So you could have, so of course the quality of the letters of recommendation matters, but if you have a letter of recommendation from someone who is well known in the university you're applying to, or is from a big university or has a big name, then that matters, because it's not an ideal world where it's just your research, quality of your research that's going to matter. Because in undergrad, I mean, nobody has exceptional research in undergrad. So yeah, your undergrad, the fact that you've done research in undergrad is good, and the quality of that and the quality of your letters of recommendation matters a lot. But also the name of the recommender and the university of the recommender also matters a lot. GPA is something that if it's good, then that's fine. And I don't, if it's bad, then maybe it's a bit of an issue, but I don't think it's super relevant either way. Yeah.
Okay. Like talking about research, then is publications important in your field?
I think that really depends on the field. Like if you're in machine learning, then yeah, a lot of people have publications. If you're in theoretical GR, then most undergrads don't have publications. So that really depends on your field. Yeah.
Okay. Did you have any interviews for any of the applications?
Yeah, so I had an interview at MIT. I didn't have an interview at some of them, but I did have an interview for MIT. Yeah.
How was that like?
So it was actually very not it was, wait, let me think about it.
Yes.
How was it? I was so sick the day I had it. I
Oh,
barely remember, but I will
okay, you
remember
did
it.
well.
Yeah, yeah, because I was like, I had this really bad cold and my eyes were watering and my nose was watering, and I was just like,
Oh,
for
no.
10 minutes, it needs to not water and then it can
Okay,
keep watering. And somehow for those 10 minutes, it didn't water.
okay.
But anyway, that's all I remember, but I will remember right now.
Like the types of questions asked and stuff.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, now
Mhm,
okay, so I had an interview for MIT, and they emailed us like about a week in advance, and they told us about the kind of questions they were going to ask. And they mentioned that it was just going to be a 10-minute interview. I don't know if this is standard for other universities as well, but
mhm,
in my case, they wanted to know about like one relevant research experience in my undergrad that has affected the way I think about research, or that is relevant to the research I will be doing at MIT.
mhm,
And they wanted to know about what I wanted to do at MIT. So, and then so these were the questions they told us beforehand that they were going to ask. And then, yeah, so it was a 10-minute interview. They asked me these questions. I thought about them beforehand. Mostly, they want to see that you can talk about your research and you understand what you're doing
mhm,
beyond just, you know, using the laser to do something or writing a code for something. They want to know that you understand what the bigger picture and that you can talk about it and explain it to people.
mhm,
So that's important to be able to get your point across. And yeah, so mostly it was a really chill interview. They asked me about my research experience. I talked just like one project, so I talked about my LIGO project, and then they asked me what I wanted to do at MIT. I told them about that. Then they asked if I had any questions for them, and so I asked them a few questions about like the whatever the rotations at labs, and it's good to
mhm.
ask some questions. You probably have questions, but even if you don't, just
Yeah,
ask something to show that you're curious and whatever.
yeah,
So that was the interview. It was really short, and they were really, really nice. And yeah, no one was trying to intimidate me or
yeah,
anything. They just wanted to get to know me. So,
yeah. I guess their point is not to scare you, but see
yeah,
how you
yeah,
are when everything's calm. And
exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
okay. So during this entire process, did you have any, you said that you had your SOP reviewed by seniors and stuff. Did you have any part of your application, be it SOP or CV or any part of it reviewed by any faculty members? And did you receive any advice from them?
I didn't have my CV reviewed by any faculty members or my SOP. If you
Mm-hmm,
can, then I think that's really good
mm-hmm,
because they can give much better feedback.
yeah.
But even getting it reviewed by seniors is going to be helpful.
Mm-hmm,
And but definitely talk to your research supervisors or your whoever's writing your LORs, or whoever sort of a research mentor to you about your applications, and ask them for advice, because asking seniors is helpful, but these are the people who have reached where you
yeah.
want to eventually reach, and they know how the process is better than anyone. So talk to them about it, ask them for advice, and they'll definitely have some good advice to give you. And yeah, yeah.
Okay. Then, yeah. So during your preparation, did you find any useful links or any other, be it websites or videos or
Mm,
anything that helped you during your
let me think about it.
preparation?
I don't know. Mm, I mean, I would just like Google sample SOPs and
Okay.
just read whatever. I don't
Yeah.
remember. I don't think there was a particular link. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
That's
think there's
fine. Yeah.
anything.
That's good advertisement for this.
Yeah.
Um,
Actually, the most useful link you can watch is probably you could watch a lecture by of the professor you're interested in working with, and
mhm,
you'll understand the research better, and you'll be able to align your SOP with it better. So
mhm,
yeah, watch the research lectures, or just like some short
yeah.
introductions to the lab or something like that. That's going to be really helpful in writing your SOP and understanding what you want to do.
Mhm,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, so, what advice would you give to people who are in their undergrads regarding how they should go on about their undergrad research work or coursework, or what do you what advice would help them in being better prepared for the grad school apps?
Yeah, I think this is very important. I think something really important is the relationships you build with the professors you're doing research with.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're doing a research project when you're undergrad with a professor, you shouldn't treat it like you shouldn't do it badly or like not do it properly. Not just because that's not a good thing to do,
Yeah.
but also because these are the people who are going to write your LORs, and you want to have a good relationship with them, and you want them to know that you're capable of doing good research. So it's really important to maintain that relationship. And after you've done a project with the professor, don't just stop talking to them and then email them 2 years later asking for an LOR. Keep them updated with what you're doing, even if you don't want to continue working on that project. It's good to
Mm-hmm.
keep communicating with them because, first of all, they know a lot and they will always have good advice to give you. And second of all, maintaining that relationship will help with your LORs. So, yeah.
Okay. What's the funding scenario like for PhDs in physics in the US?
So in the US, I have only applied in the US. I can't answer for Europe, but in the US, it's really good. You usually get funded, especially in science PhDs. You get good funding. You get supported. You get a good living, like stipend, which will support your normal standard of living. So yeah, it's pretty nice.
And you don't need to externally apply for scholarship.
Yeah, no, you don't need to for PhDs. Yeah.
So, like the whole process of applying, like involves a lot of care and a lot of effort in for like each application, and then the probability of even getting in even after that is quite low. So, what advice do you have regarding handling the stress, like the waiting time as well as like post rejections?
I would be a hypocrite if I gave advice about handling stress in that situation. Um, I don't know, talk to someone, find friends who are applying and rant to them about it. That's the best thing I can tell you. But yeah, I was nervous and I was always refreshing my email. Try not to do that. Yeah. That does not help.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, having a group of people who's applied with you, and then I think,
Yeah,
talking it about
that
with them
helps.
really helps. Yeah, sure.
But also stop talking about it after a point, because you need to find something else to engage you during the waiting period. Yeah.
Did you also were you also addicted with Grad Cafe? Or?
Yeah, I don't even mention Grad Cafe here because if you tell people about Grad Cafe, they will definitely check it.
Yeah.
So I just don't tell people about it because it doesn't help. It doesn't help at all. Actually, I found out that I got into MIT through Grad Cafe.
Really?
I always had Grad Cafe open and I would refresh it every 5 minutes like a crazy person. And then I was refreshing Grad Cafe and I saw that someone posted that they got into MIT, and I was like, oh, so the acceptances are out, and I guess I didn't get one. And then I opened my email and then I got the acceptance. So I found out through Grad Cafe. Yeah, it's
Not the
unhealthy.
best way to find out.
Yeah.
Advice or final.
I like this question. Any exciting things about your research field or something?
Okay.
Yeah.
This is something normally people don't want to speak about.
Oh, but that's the best part. Okay.
Yeah, I know, right? That's why I included it. Like if you ask me, I can go on about for 1 hour.
Exactly. How short does this need to be?
Okay, so can you mention some exciting research area or some exciting question, unanswered question in your field that would hopefully rope in people?
Yeah. So actually, currently I'm working in precision measurement, which basically means lasers are really cool and you can see a lot with them. So basically, LIGO uses lasers to to detect and measure gravitational waves. And currently, we're trying to use lasers to measure new physics beyond the standard model, like dark matter or any kind of new physics effects. And there's so much you can do with just like really, really precise lasers and photons. And it's crazy to think that just using light, you can measure everything from gravitational waves to like teeny quantum effects, but you can, and that's really exciting. So Yeah, if that's not motivation, if dark matter and gravitational waves don't sound exciting enough, then I don't know what does. But
Okay, thanks a lot for your time.
yeah, thanks. Sorry I was late. I
Yeah,
just,
no worries.
yeah,
Yeah, I get
yeah,
it. Yeah,
okay.
welcome to PhD life.
Yeah, yeah,
Anyways, thanks a
okay.
lot. See ya. Bye.
Yeah, bye.